evening, welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Yeshi Chanzom. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Tuesday, the 22nd of September. India registered record of high single-day recoveries from Covid-19. Afghan President Ghani says peace possible through political settlement. And UN should not interfere in domestic affairs of states, says Sri Lankan President. And now for all the details. In an unprecedented surge, India has recorded the highest number of single-day recoveries from Covid-19, and this trend has sustained for the past 4 consecutive days. More than 100,000 new recoveries have been registered in the last 24 hours, taking the total number of recoveries in the country to over 4.4 million. This has resulted in the recovery rate touching 80.86%.
India reported 75,083 fresh cases of the coronavirus disease in the last 24 hours, the lowest since late August. The new COVID-19 cases and fatalities have taken India's tally to 5.5,062,663 and the death toll to 88,935. With over 1,468 patients cured in last 24 hours, India has continued the consistent growth of single-day COVID-19 recoveries during the last 4 days. With this, the total number of recoveries are nearly 4.5 million, said India's Health Ministry. This has resulted in the recovery rate touching 80.86%. India's landmark achievement of recording the maximum number of recoveries has positioned it as a top country globally.
तो रिकवरी में हम इस समय विश्व में नंबर 1 हैं। दूसरी जो बड़ी हाईलाइट है वो ये है कि देश का जो रिकवरी रेट है वो 80% से अधिक हो चुका है आज जब हम आपसे बातें कर रहे हैं। तीसरी जो बड़ी बात है, मुख्य बात है वो ये कि पिछले 24 घंटों में 1 लाख से ज़्यादा रिकवरीज देश में दर्ज की गईं।
Meanwhile, as many schools and colleges across the country have started partial reopening after a 6-month-long hiatus due to COVID-19, India's Education Ministry announced new calendar for undergraduate, postgraduate first-year students and a full refunds to be made on admission cancellations. All higher education institutions have been advised to teach 6 days a week to make up for the lost learning hours. Breaks and vacations will also be curtailed.
Security forces neutralized at least one terrorist in an encounter in Budgam district of India's Jammu and Kashmir on Tuesday. The gun battle had broken out on Monday evening.
At least one terrorist was neutralized by security forces on Tuesday during an encounter in Budgam district of India's Jammu and Kashmir. The Kashmir Zone Police, while informing about the encounter on Twitter, said one unidentified terrorist was killed in Charar-e-Sharif area of Budgam. The gun battle between the terrorists and the security personnel, which started on Monday evening, was still underway till the last reports came in. India accuses neighbouring Pakistan of aiding terrorists to mount attack on its soil and spread unrest in Kashmir Valley. In the latest, India on Monday, while rejecting the references made by Pakistan on Jammu and Kashmir and the 75th UN General Assembly, said Pakistan is a country which is globally recognized epicenter of terrorism. It trained terrorists and hails them as martyrs.
India, during the 45th session of the UN Human Rights Council, tore into Pakistan over violence against human rights and intimidating journalists and human rights defenders. Highlighting enforced disappearances in Pakistan, India on Monday said that in Prime Minister Imran Khan's new Pakistan, you may not return home. Exercising India's right to reply at the ongoing session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, India's first secretary at the Permanent Mission, S. Senthil Kumar, on Monday gave a detailed account of cases of enforced disappearances, murders, detentions, tortures of civil rights activists, representatives of local political parties and journalists in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Kumar informed the Assembly about the numerous instances of incitement to violence against journalists and human rights defenders in Pakistan, adding that It is especially worrying that the accusations of blasphemy, which could put individuals at risk for violence. Security forces in Pakistan have gained proficiency in unlawful killings and kidnapping of people in so-called counter-terrorism operations.
Human rights defenders in Pakistan are being silenced every day through intimidation, secret detention, torture and enforced disappearances with the direct involvement of the Pakistani government. Targeting of journalists through threats, assaults, arrests, instilling extreme fear and self-censorship exposes the fallacy of Pakistan's so-called military-run democratic system.
Pakistan government reportedly has done little to stop the mistreatment of minorities who was systematically denied social and political rights. They continue to face severe consequences. Moving on, a massive rally was held by members of the Pashtun community recently against re-emergence of Pakistan-sponsored terror groups in the federally administered tribal areas. They also voiced concerns over targeted killings and enforced disappearances of innocent Pashtuns in the military operations by Pakistani forces.
Hundreds of Pashtuns recently took part in a massive rally in South Waziristan against the re-emergence of Pakistan-sponsored terror groups and for the long-pending demand to produce missing persons to courts. The Pashtun Long March was called by the Pashtun Tahaffuz Movement or PTM, a political party which exposes military offences and brings to the front the issues which continue to plague the locals, including enforced disappearances and fake encounters by the state. The protesters raised slogans against targeted killings of innocent Pashtuns in so-called military operations, ethnic stereotyping, and enforced disappearances by the Pakistani state and its security forces. Activists have long alleged that Pakistani army functions along with militant groups in federally administered tribal areas and indiscriminately uses brute force against Pashtuns. Despite protests on such a large scale, Pakistani media has been mum about the event. However, hashtag Pashtun Long March to Wana was seen trending on Twitter.
In news from Afghanistan, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in a virtual UN meeting on Monday reiterated the call for ceasefire with Taliban, saying it is a clear and urgent priority for Afghans. The remarks came as intra-Afghan peace talks are being held in Doha to help find a political settlement to the years-old conflict in Afghanistan.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, while delivering his speech at the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the UN on Monday night, underscored the important role of multilateralism and particularly the UN in addressing the challenges that continue to impact Afghanistan and the world. On the importance of ceasefire in Afghanistan, Ghani in his virtual speech said, "Though we are facing multiple drivers of turmoil all at once in Afghanistan, there is a clear and urgent priority for us, a ceasefire."
Though we are facing multiple drivers of turmoil all at once in Afghanistan, there's a clear and urgent priority for us, a ceasefire. An urgent end to the violence will more than anything else give us a chance to progress.
Ghani's address to the UN comes as the peace negotiating team representing the Afghan government meets with Taliban negotiators in Qatar's capital Doha to help find a political settlement to the deadly conflict in the country. Although the Doha talks have brought new hopes among Afghans for a negotiated settlement of the conflict, civilian casualties remain high in the country amid ongoing Taliban violence. Statistics by the Afghan Interior Ministry indicate that at least 98 civilians were killed and 230 others were wounded in Taliban attacks in 24 provinces in the last 2 weeks as violence increases.
Moving on to news from Nepal. After 6 months of restrictions, domestic flights in Nepal resumed from Monday. The government had halted domestic flights in March to prevent the COVID-19 infection from spreading in the Himalayan nation.
Domestic flights in Nepal resumed their operations from Monday with necessary precautions after 6 months of being grounded due to restrictions imposed amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The Nepali government had halted domestic flights in March this year. A cabinet meeting earlier this month had decided to let long route public vehicles and domestic flights to operate from the mid of September. After a long haul, flights have been allowed to run with 100% occupancy.
एकदमै खुसी लागेको छ लगभग प्रत्येक महिना आइजाइ गरिरहनु पर्ने मेरो कामले गर्दाखेरि तर यो पछिल्लो लकडाउन सुरु भइकन चाहिँ 6-7 महिनादेखि जान पाइरहेको थिएन अनि यो प्लेन पनि खुलिरहेको थिएन यो एयरपोर्टहरु सबै लकडाउनको कारणले गर्दाखेरि
Authorities have opened flights to major destinations all around Nepal, but the number of flights has been contracted to 25% than that of usual. Domestic flights have started operating in Nepal even as the country has recorded a total of 65,276 coronavirus cases, while 427 people have lost their lives due to the infections.
In news from Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa on Monday said that the United Nations should emphasize non-interference in domestic affairs of member states. His statement came in wake of recent remarks by UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet on the proposed 20th Amendment to the Sri Lanka's constitution.
Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa on Monday said that the United Nations should emphasize non-interference in domestic affairs of member states while addressing a high-level meeting to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the world body. In a pre-recorded speech, Rajapaksa said that he firmly believes that partnerships fostered between member states and the UN continues at their best when no country is held hostage to the interests of a few. His statement came in the wake of recent remarks by UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet on the proposed 20th Amendment to the Sri Lanka's constitution, which she said may negatively impact on the independence of key institutions.
At a time when the world is facing a common and unrevealed threat, the United Nations we need, I'm certain, will place due emphasis on the sovereign equality of states, respect of territorial integrity, and non-interference in their domestic affairs.
Sri Lankan envoy Dayani Mendes had earlier this month told the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva that the constitutional amendment will be passed following a complete democratic process, and hence Bachelet's comments were unwarranted and prejudgmental. The 20th Amendment, which aims to restore full executive powers to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is likely to be debated in the parliament during the second half of October, reports suggest.
The famed double-humped camels of India's northern Ladakh territory are soon going to be inducted in the Indian Army to help troops patrol the India-China border in Ladakh. In India, double-humped camels are only found in Ladakh's Nubra Valley. In view of the Chinese aggression along the Sino-India border, the Indian Army will soon deploy double-humped Bactrian camels for patrolling duties along the Chinese border in India's northern Ladakh. The Defence Institute of High Altitude Research, the High Altitude Wing of India's Defence Research and Development Organisation or DRDO, said they have conducted research with the animal at the heights of up to 17,000 feet with a load-carrying capacity of 170 kilograms in the eastern Ladakh region. They are now breeding the camels, and as soon as there are enough numbers, they will be trained and inducted into the army. The Bactrian camels are naturally found in rocky mountain massifs as well as arid deserts.
It can carry a load up to 170 kg and patrol distance up to 12 km. 170 kg to 12 km distance at the height of 17,000 feet. And this to this harsh climate condition, these animals are very suitable in adaptability. They can survive in food and water scarcity for 3 days.
In recent months, tensions between New Delhi and Beijing flared up, and both Indian and Chinese troops have exchanged heat along Ladakh border twice since June. Earlier this month, both sides had accused each other of violating the line of actual control and entering their respective countries. Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/AsAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @AsAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Good night.